Here, Tom.
Greg Paulcott in Berlin. Thank you, Greg. Meantime, President-elect Donald Trump today releasing a holiday letter that he received from Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin writes, and I quote, "I hope we will be able, by acting in a constructive and pragmatic manner, to take real steps to restore the framework of bilateral cooperation in different areas, as well as being our level of cooperation in the collaboration, I should say, on the international scene to a qualitative new level." Well, Trump responded with this statement about Vladimir Putin. He says, his thoughts are so correct. I hope both sides are able to live up to these thoughts and we do not have to travel an alternative path. And during a news conference earlier today, Putin said he would be willing to visit the United States if President-elect Donald Trump sent him an invitation. So joining us now, the founder and the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, and Foundation for the Defense of Democracy's President Clifford May. Dr. Jasser, let me start with you. This business about in Germany, at first I was aghast because I heard about how the police had him on their radar and they were following him and he had a criminal record. And I thought, well, what was wrong with the police? But with 1 million immigrants into Germany, I'm thinking, no, I don't care how good the German police are or are not. There's no way they could follow how many people are somebody that they should be keeping tabs on.
But, Tom, there's something we can learn from every one of these, and this one is a known wolf. It's not somebody who could get lost in 1 million people. He came in through not only the last trek that he did down to Italy, which doesn't make any sense, but in the last 5 years, he came in through Tunisia to Italy, was in prison for 4 years because of violence at a migrant center. Then Italy said, we don't want you, get out of the country. They deported him to where? We don't know. Just leave the country. He then makes his way up to Germany, lives there, has interactions with the law 4 times, a knife on a bus, a drug arrest, was actually under surveillance because his roommate was related to ISIS and was arrested. But this guy went off surveillance in September. So he's a known wolf. He's not an unknown person. And yet they dropped the ball. So the EU, Germany has a major problem in communication between intelligence apparatus and the following of the ideas that they should be following.
I agree with you that they should have been all over this guy, but I just, my point is that there's so many people that they should be watching because so many people have come in. Cliff, the other problem here obviously is, I mean, I go back a few years now, but when I was a younger man, they would travel Europe. You had to stop at every border, show your passport, and go through the whole drill. Now, take your pick. Travel wherever you want, obviously.
Right. And the idea of having open borders in Europe was not meant for a time when you have millions of migrants, as well as terrorists who are trying to get in and trying to get around in these various countries. That's a real problem, as is the possibility of trying to integrate and assimilate all the migrants, or if you want to call them that, all the refugees who are coming. Too often they are ending up in what you might call ghettos, some might call colonies, and those become recruiting grounds. Those become places where these kinds of people can find their way in, and it's very difficult for the police to track them in there, and very difficult to find people who will tell on them. Some do, but others don't.
Back to you, Dr. Jasser. This whole business about Europe being more open and being more socialist than we are, although we keep moving more toward a European model, how likely is it that we are going to see the same problems Europe has when it comes to this influx of terrorists?
Well, our trajectory isn't as quick as theirs, but we're headed in the same place if we don't start to focus on the ideology. Terrorism is a symptom. The ideology is this collectivist mindset that they have allegiance to the global jihad. The mantra, I hope, for the Trump administration will be, it's the global jihad, stupid. And the lack of borders, the lack of a secular state identity is the fact that then feeds this collectivist global Islamist mindset. The only antidote, and I'll tell you as a Muslim, the only thing that didn't make me get radicalized was my American nationalism, my belief that this Constitution protects me from the Sharia state. That's the way to assimilate Muslims in Europe, is to bring back their nation-state identities, but to wed it to a belief in freedom and liberty for their immigrants and also for their the indigenous people of Europe.
So here we are on the cusp of the holiday weekend, and Cliff, you've seen the reports that ISIS is saying they're calling for aspirational attacks on during the holidays, and with Hanukkah and Christmas lining up together, are you on pins and needles about this?
I'm not on pins and needles. I think there are a lot of people in intelligence and law enforcement who are and who ought to be, because we've had the attack in Germany. We had almost an attack. It was stopped in Australia. But in both these cases, and we're likely to see others as well, you're talking about attacks on Christians during Christmas time while they're celebrating in Christian majority countries. It's not just that they're doing this in the Middle East, where, of course, a Coptic Christian church was recently bombed, 24 people killed. This is an attack, exactly what Zuhdi is saying. It's an attack by those people who identify themselves as jihadists, who see themselves as internationalists, and don't have an identity of a particular country and respect those who have other identities, whether they be religious, ethnic, or nationalist.
Dr. Jasser, this letter back and forth, the holiday greetings between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, a lot of people are making a lot of it. Are you concerned about it, or are you hopeful about it?
Well, I'll tell you, the formalities sort of in the courtship period before President Trump fills the White House I don't know what to make of it. I do think that once President Trump's in the White House, we may share some common enemies. But I hope then, I'll tell you, as a Syrian American, Moscow doesn't really share our values. Their relationship with Iran is problematic. The genocide committed by Assad is problematic. So maybe we may work with them to get rid of ISIS, but ultimately, I hope we can get some leverage in a positive strength way to end what the Assad regime is doing to the people of Syria.
Cliff May, what's your reaction?
President George W. Bush looked into Putin's eyes and thought he saw someone who is straightforward and trustworthy. Turned out to be incorrect. President Obama thought that relations with Russia were bad thanks to Bush, and that a simple toy and a button you push that would solve everything. With a reset, that didn't happen. I hope that Trump will have a very realistic attitude towards Putin, who right now has allied himself with the world's greatest sponsor of terrorism, according to our U.S. government, and that's Iran, also helping Hezbollah. And the devastation we've seen in Aleppo is largely due to Russia, as well as Iran, as well as to Hezbollah. So one thing I do hope is that he can drive a harder bargain with Putin than we've been able to do during the past 8 years.
Well, that's his claim. He's a hard bargain driver. Let me put it that way. Zuhdi, Jasser, Cliff May, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for coming on. Good to see you.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, we're coming right back with much more. Stay with us. The incoming White House press secretary says President Trump will always put America's safety first.
Countries need to know that under a Donald Trump presidency, business as usual is over. He's going to act. He's going to